ensures that it also ensures that when you're filling these positions, you fill them with the right and the cultural fit talents, the right and cultural fit candidates, right? So recruitment strategies ensure that hiring is not a reactive process, but a proactive one and systematic effort to build a strong and diverse workforce. Here we'll be discussing some recruitment strategies, that is, some of the methods you can adopt or employ in order to ensure that your recruitment process is effective and efficient. However, it is noteworthy that there's various recruitment strategies, right, that you can use, but for the purpose of this discussion, we'll be discussing just about a few of them. So firstly, we have employer branding. This particular recruitment strategy speaks to trying to make sure that you have a very compelling employer brand, because when you have a very compelling employer brand, it's going to be easy for you to attract top talents. Right? One of the effective ways you can ensure this is to have this thing that is known as employee testimonies, right? Some organizations have client testimonies on their website, but another way you can ensure a better brand, particularly that speaks to talent pool in the outside world, is having employee excuse me, please. I have a cold, so I have stuffy nose. Kindly bear with me. So, like I was saying, one of the way you can ensure a very good employer brand for your company is to encourage employee testimonials. And you can do this by creating a company vlog or blog or podcast where employees can share how fulfilling they are or how it is interesting for them to work in your company. So secondly, we have talent pool management. This is a proactive way or a proactive method towards ensuring that your recruitment is effective, right? One way you can do this is to have a pool, a talent pool, or maintain a database of your past participants that did very well, that did impress you, but for one reason or the other, they were not able to be successful, or you didn't select them for one reason or the other, right? So for future requirements, you can just go into your pool and get suitable people from there. So the third one we have here is university engagement. I personally call this catch them young approach, right? Because it basically entails going for university programs and trying to attract young graduates just as they leave the universities, right? So this way you'll be able to attract good people, potentials, right? And trade them in such a way that they'll become perfect fit for your organization. So moving forward, we'll also be looking at encouraging employee boomerang. So employee boomerang is the term that is used to explain a situation where an ex-employee of the company comes back to join the company again in a later time, right? So you'd ask me, how is this of any advantage? Because it is of advantage because, of course, someone that has left your company has gained better insights, has gained better experiences, right? And at the same time, they are well attuned to your culture already. So by the time you are taking them back, you have resources, they are able to bring fresh perspective, and it's not so hard for them to blend into your culture. And lastly, another way for us to ensure effective recruitment process is by encouraging diversity. We'll be talking more on this much later. Okay, moving forward, why do we even need recruitment strategy? Do we need to consider some strategy, or do we even need to be strategic about our recruitment process in the first place? There are various reasons why we have to be strategic about our recruitment, and I'll be discussing a few. Number one, we'll be saving time and resources when we are strategic with our recruitment process, right? Because if you are strategic, you can get the desired results at a goal. There's no need for us to do our recruitment over and over again and keep making mistakes, right? So secondly, we also attract high quality and culture fit talent if we are being strategic with our recruitment process. Another thing is that we would increase our level of employee retention, because when we are strategic, you'll be able to attract the right people that fit into your culture. And when these people fit into your culture, it's very easy. It's going to be very easy for you to retain them. So moving forward, we also have increased employee engagement. Trust me, when you are able to retain your employee, what that means is they are well engaged and they are motivated. Also, recruitment strategies would also ensure productivity and profitability. So moving to the most important part of this webinar or our conversation, workforce diversity. I know that when we hear the word diversity, the first thing that comes to virtually everybody's mind is difference in gender, or difference in religion, or difference in maybe cultural background, right? However, diversity has various dimensions. Excuse me, please. Yeah, so there are various dimensions of diversity beyond just these three areas. I'll be looking at them shortly. Diversity can be defined as the mix of people within a wide range of differences and characteristics within an organization's workforce. It encompasses not only the visible dimensions such as race, gender, age, and disability, but also the less visible differences like backgrounds, education, experiences, religions, personality types, perceptive, and even sexual orientations. It is also noteworthy that I say when we talk about differences in disability, we're not only talking about physical disability. We also need to take into consideration cognitive disability and mental disabilities. So moving ahead, we'll be talking about the types of diversity that we have. So there are various types of diversity, like I've mentioned earlier, and all of them can be categorized into these sections. For the first one, we have the demographic diversity. This includes factors like race, gender, age, and sexual orientations. We also have the cultural diversity. Here we are looking at differences in nationalities, religion, culture, and language. We also have the cognitive diversity, looking at differences in perspectives, problem-solving approaches, and thought processes. Moving forward, we also have functional diversity. This speaks about the differences in education, educational background, skill sets, and disabilities. We also have the experiential diversity. Here, we look at differences in life experiences, work experiences, and hobbies. Excuse me, please. Okay. Why do we even need diversity? Because you would agree with me that diversity takes a lot of work, takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of work. And why must we put ourselves through this work in the first place? So there must be some advantages that diversity comes with, right? And I would like to hear from us. What do we think are the reasons or the benefits of diversity? So please kindly drop your answers in the comment section, in the chat box rather. Taiwo, please let me know as soon as we have responses.
Not yet.
All right, guys, please kindly
Someone
drop.
said,
Sorry?
someone said innovation.
Innovation, yes. Any other response? Who said innovation, please, Taiwo?
Sorry, a minute. Uh, Ogugwa. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it well. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you very much
Um,
for that
Another person
response.
said, Jay said diversity brings about multiple perspectives. Then
Mm,
Faith said technology.
yeah,
He
yeah.
said wide opinion from different orientation.
I'm very impressed by your responses. It just shows that you are following, and all of you are correct with your responses, right? So let's just look at some of the advantages that we have here and discuss it. So having a diverse workforce will bring different perspective, just like one of our participants mentioned. Different perspective, experiences, and skill sets to the table. This will cascade into numerous benefits, such as for such organization, right? So we cannot overestimate the benefits that comes with diversity. So regardless of the work that it entails or require, we should also put it into consideration, right? So for this part, we'll be looking at the benefits of diversity from three major perspectives. Number one is the compliance. When you consider diversity and you maintain it within your organization, you tend to reduce your legal risk for your company, right? Because various organizations and even countries, they have it as law in their countries for organization not to discriminate or to encourage diversity in their workplace. So by ensuring diversity, you're saving yourself from possible punishments, fines, or even lawsuits, right? So secondly, you are also going to be aligning with industry standard and best practices when you comply with diversity, as well as increasing your reporting, enhancing your reporting and transparencies, right? For the business objective, when you adopt diversity, you are open to a more diverse talent pool. And as a result, you have a wider pool of competent people with fresh and varying perspectives, skill sets, and capacities, right? So, and that's good for the business actually. And secondly, it tends to have a great company culture because there's no way you have a diverse work team and you will not have an inclusive culture. This culture ensures that everybody is seen, appreciated, and valued, irrespective of their differences, right? And also, when you take diversity seriously, you tend to increase your stakeholders' confidence because there are certain business partners, even customers, that tend to take companies seriously, companies that value diversity seriously. And ultimately, diversity will also lead to business profits, where you would increase your productivity and profitability. Because when you have all of this, all of the previous advantages that's been identified, when you have all of them, it's going to positively impact not only on the quality of your outputs, but as well the quality and the quantity, right? And when you have that impacted upon, you can increase your productivity and profitability. Here, we'll also be discussing some relevant data that further buttresses the need for diversity. S&P Global in 2021 mentioned that companies with greater diversities are 43% more likely to experience higher profits and 27% more likely to have a superior value creation. Also, Harvard Business Review in 2019 stated that companies with more diverse management teams report a 19% increase in customer satisfaction scores. We also have McKinsey in 2019 that stated that diverse companies report 19% higher employee engagement and productivity compared to those with less diversity. And the last one we have here is Clover Pop in 2019, who stated that diverse team made better business decisions. It's 87% of the time, as they are able to leverage multiple viewpoints to arrive at more effective solutions. So let's look at some of the practices of top organizations. Here we have Accenture. Accenture have this inclusion and diversity goal to reach a 50-50 gender balance workforce by 2025. Also, Microsoft publish an annual diversity reports tracking the progress of diversity matrices like gender and race. We also have P&G that promotes gender equality between its advertising and workplace policies. And we have the almighty Coca-Cola. They have this global diversity mission to reflects diversity in its consumer base, in its workforce. All right. So I'll be ushering in my COO to further explain to us how effectively and how more intentionally we can infuse diversity into our recruitment process. But before we dive right into it, we are going to take a quick poll. Taiwo, kindly deploy the poll. Please confirm you can hear me, Taiwo.
Yes, I can. A minute, please.
All right.
All
right. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a poll on the screen. Kindly answer the questions. Just click on the answer you feel is appropriate for the question, and we'll read out the results very soon.
How are we doing with the poll, Taiwo?
Okay, kindly confirm. Please confirm that you can see my screen and the result of the poll.
Can you read that out? Can you read out what we have
Okay.
as our responses?
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
So the question was, what kind of bias is most noticeable in your workplace? 31% chose gender bias, 19% chose ethnic bias, and nobody chose religious bias, while 50% of people chose none as the bias that is noticeable in their working place. So I think
50% chose none.
so a larger percent of people said there's no bias in their working.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Taiwo, for that. And thank you everyone for your responses to the poll. It's amazing to hear that we have a large number of people saying that there are no biases in their organization. That's very positive feedback, and we're happy to hear that. A big thank you to my co-facilitator, Rashida, for taking the first part of this presentation. Excuse me 1 minute, I'm trying to get the screen. So I think I'll start by first saying my fun fact about myself. And I think I'm going to say that for me, that would be that I enjoy window shopping online. And I do it to the very serious face. So you can see me seriously looking at my phone or my laptop, and you think I'm reading something, but I'm actually window shopping. I'm looking at these fancy things that I'm not going to buy because, it's not in my budget for the month. But I just enjoy doing that. That's one fun fact about me. So I'll go right into the presentation and continue from where Rashida stopped. Excuse me 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. So We have understood recruitment strategies and the need for diversity, but what we find is that there are biases that exist in our environment, which is why we took a poll to find out what are these biases that we have in our organizations. And we are happy to hear that a large percentage of people attribute to the fact that they don't have any biases in their organization. So let's be very thankful for that and hope that, with time we get to 100%. So what are the causes of some recruitment bias in a diverse workforce? What are some biases or the causes of biases that we experience? Recruitment biases can be very challenging factors, and sometimes they are unconscious and conscious biases. So, some of them we know, we just have these biases in our minds that, using gender, for example, we think that a woman can do this more than a man can do that. So we already have a bias you know, in our minds when when we put out a rule out there. And some other times there are unconscious biases, which are the most challenging ones because we don't even know they are there and they are impacting our decisions when we are recruiting. So we're going to be looking at the reasons behind these biases in subsequent slides. So let's take the first one being the cultural and stereotypical biases. Here we're going to be talking about culture. I mean, when we see people from different backgrounds, for example, we just automatically attribute some characteristics to them, and that can bring a bias in our recruitment strategy. This can also impact the fact that we will not hire the right people for the role that we are hiring for. So this bias can limit our pool of talents, our pool of candidates, because in our minds we're already thinking, I don't want somebody from this part of the country to work in this role. And when you do that, you're already taking out a large amount of people who are qualified for this job. Second bias is affinity bias. Affinity is speaking to the fact that I feel like because I belong to a certain demography, a certain experience or individual, a certain background, I feel that it's only people that are from that place that can do this job. It's only people that are from that particular sect of background or demographic that I want to work in my organization. Again, when you do that, you're taking out a wide number of very qualified talents that you can hire. So other biases or other causes of bias are halo and horn effects. Now, this is one that we see happen a lot in our environment. When you say halo effect, because because one person leaves a positive impact or a positive what's the word now? A positive vibe for you. You then decide that because this person who is from a certain sector or a certain part of the country did something wonderful for me, that means everybody from that place is an angel. And then you get biased in your mind, and when you're recruiting, you're hiring only from that place. Or you talk about the horn effect, which is the opposite of the halo effect, basically. And when somebody does a negative or leaves a negative impression on you, you conclude that everybody from that place is a bad person. I'm not going to hire anybody from that part of the country because they are bad, or anybody from that part of the world. You can say citizens from a certain country, this is how they behave because you experienced one person's actions. Now, that is a bias that can impede our recruitment strategy. Another bias is name and background. So when we are looking at resumes and people's profiles, and we see their names speaking to a certain background, we already conclude, this person is from so and so. Or we conclude that this person's name is, let me say, Amaka, for example, and we all know the song, Amaka Disappoint Me. And so because this person's name is Amaka, this person is going to disappoint me, something like that. And that is a very bad bias that can limit our pool of talents. Moving forward to unconscious gender bias, like I said at the beginning when I started speaking, we tend to attribute different genders or different roles to genders. We talk about gender roles. It's always going to be a source of intense conversations when we talk about gender roles, because it's always going to be there, as a matter of fact. But I always like to say that you cannot limit, there are always exceptions to every rules. You cannot limit a certain role to a certain gender because that is the way it has always been. That is a bias that we need to break if we want to encourage diversity in our workplaces. So having said all of that, we'll go to a question that I'm going to throw to the audience, and I hope we can get responses. what has been put in place in our organizations to prevent bias? What structures, what processes, what policies have we put in place to prevent bias from happening in our organizations? So Taiwo, please manage the chat box and let me know if we have any responses to the question. Or you could unmute, you could raise your hand and unmute and speak so we can hear you.
Okay, no response yet.
Okay. So let's talk, let's engage. We always like our sessions to be an engaging one. Let us have this conversation and learn from each other what processes or standards or criteria, whatever we may call it, have we put in place to ensure that when we are recruiting, when we are deploying our recruitment strategies, there are no biases of any sort, and we are opening our pool wide enough to get talent from diverse cultures, diverse what's the word, generations, diverse, backgrounds. What strategies have you put in place in our organization? Do we have any responses?
Yes. Abib said blind hiring.
Blind hiring, fantastic. Fantastic. That's great. Do we have any other contribution?
Not yet from chat box.
Okay. Okay. I guess we can move on. We have blind hiring, and I'm sure there's different other strategies that people are deploying to ensure that we prevent bias from happening in our organization. So we'll move on to the next slide, and we're going to be talking about ways of overcoming unconscious recruitment bias in a diverse workforce. What are the ways, like I asked earlier, what are the strategies and the processes we are putting in place to ensure that unconsciously we are not screening out people based on biases? So number one we have here is implementing a structured interview. So when we have a structured interview where we are asking the same questions to every single candidate, we're not going to say, okay, we're going to ask women these questions, and we're going to ask men these questions, or we're going to ask the Gen Zs this question and the baby boomers this question. We're asking a structured interview question to every single person. We are ensuring equity in every single way. And when we do that, we are giving everybody a fair playing ground to speak to their talents and speak to their experiences and how they can add value to the organization, basically. Second way we can ensure that we prevent biases from happening is utilizing blind recruitment strategies. Like I believe that was Abib that mentioned blind recruitment strategies or techniques, where we ensure that when you're hiring, we are not looking at the names or the backgrounds, basically taking out everything that could be limiting our view, the names of the persons that speaking to their cultural background, even their educational qualifications sometimes may not necessarily be what we're looking out for if we're looking out for skills and experiences. So we take all of those out and we focus on the skill sets, the experiences that we're looking out for. Another way we can ensure that we are dealing with unconscious biases is ensuring training. When we are training our hiring managers, we're training our recruitment personnel on this unconscious bias, because we may not even know, because the word there is unconscious. We may not know that we have this biases in our minds. So when we get to train people and make them understand that you need to eliminate these thoughts, you need to eliminate this thinking, you need to be more open in your thinking, then people start to do better in their recruitment or when they're hiring talents. Another way, again, we can work on dealing with our unconscious biases is leveraging diverse hiring panels. So when we have a panel of diverse people in your panel, you have people from different backgrounds and different experiences in your interview panel, you get to have a very holistic and broad view of feedback, of interview feedback, against where you have just one person who is already biased, um, from already has a set, I want this person and I'm going to get that person, and irrespective of the feedback he or she is getting from different talents, because there's a bias, it restricts the recruitment process. Moving on, we look at other ways that we can do it. We can eliminate unconscious bias. We have standardizing evaluation criteria. So earlier I mentioned standardizing interview process. Now we have standardizing evaluation criteria. Tongue twister. Okay, so when we have a standard way of evaluating our criteria, then we have there's no bias, or there's no kind of discrimination in any sort. There's a standard. These are the criteria we're looking for, be it a man, a woman, a boy, a girl. The standard is the standard, and everybody has a fair and equitable playing ground. Also, we have encouraging accountability and transparency. So we always encourage accountability. Let people know, the recruitment team or the hiring manager, let them understand that they are accountable for all of these things we've talked about, the standard interviews, the standard evaluation. We are accountable for that, and be transparent in your actions. You don't need to be hiding anything or have any set goal in mind. The goal should be that of achieving success for the organization. Also, moving on, we have leveraging using technology and AI. Of course, we have to leverage technology, and so leveraging technology basically means using technology to take away any kind of biases that may have been formed. But we need to be careful while leveraging technology at the same time, because of course we feed this technology with we feed the technology with what to look out for. So we need to ensure that whatever we are feeding into the ATS, for example, or whatever tool we are using, is not already biased from the get-go. And then setting diversity and inclusion goals. We need to have a goal in mind as an organization, as a team. What do we want to achieve? Do we want to be a team that is known for fair and equitable employment strategies? So these are the goals that we put in place, and we set these goals. We communicate it to every member of the team so that there is actual buy-in from everyone. So we move on to the next slide, which is going to be talking about creating an inclusive culture that attracts diverse employees. We want to have a team that is diverse, because a team that is diverse leads to innovation, as someone mentioned earlier on during the session. Innovation, growth, all of those good things that we want to achieve, which is why we need to ensure that our teams are diverse from different backgrounds and different perspectives. So creating an inclusive culture is very essential for attracting and retaining diverse talents. If we want to attract diverse talents, we want to retain them, then we need to ensure that our culture in our organization is inclusive. It speaks to diversity. I mean, that is the future of work, basically. In fact, it's the now of work. It's not the future anymore, because we have global teams. We have organizations that are global. We have people here working outside of the country. We have people outside of the country coming into work in Nigeria. So definitely we are speaking to globalization. So we need to ensure that if we want to be, keep in trend, we are ensuring that inclusive culture is going on in our organization. Now, how do we do this? How do we achieve an inclusive work culture? The first point is to define and communicate inclusive values. Okay, so we need to first of all define, like I said earlier, what is our goal? What kind of organization do we want to be known for? There were some companies that Rashida highlighted. I'll speak to Coca-Cola, for example. Coca-Cola sometimes it feels like home. I don't know how to put it, because there was a time when they had our names on the bottle. We had our names in, there was a name, but then when you're buying Coke, you're looking out for a bottle that has your name, be it Kunle or Shegun, and it's our names in our own local dialect, not just the English names. That is speaking to diversity, not just for their employees now. They even went as far as to their consumers, and we can see the impact it has reached. Coca-Cola is a worldwide wide known brand. And so they defined it from the very beginning that this is what they wanted to achieve, and they went with it. And they went by communicating this to the leaders, to the managers, and then cascading it down to everyone to understand that this is our value, this is what we want to be known for. So when we are engaging employees, we are speaking to our values of inclusivity. The next point is to commit to diverse leadership. When you have set out your values, then you want to ensure that you're implementing it in every facet of your organizations. So you start from the leadership team, for example, you have a diverse team in your leadership. This will definitely cascade down to the members of the organization, to the team members. So we should ensure that we have, as much as possible, a diverse team in our organization. Then moving on, we have open and respectful communication. It is very important for us to foster open and transparent communication with the team. Let team members always understand what is going on, understand the consequences of consequences of their actions, so that there's an open communication at every time. Next point would be to promote inclusive hiring practices, which you've spoken about. We talked about blind recruitment strategies, standardizing interviews and evaluation criteria. So ensure that this hiring practices are put in place and everybody is made to understand that. Next point will be promote or provide diversity and inclusion training. Like I said earlier, we need to train, continuously let people understand that this is what we're trying to achieve by being diverse. We're trying to reach, compete globally with the diverse markets. So continuous training to not just the recruitment team, but the entire hiring managers, the entire employees. So the other point to supporting a culture, an inclusive culture in the organization, is to support employee resource groups, basically supporting employees to identify with themselves, to be free to identify with, themselves, with whatever background. Even in an organization, you identify with your fellow people from your similar background, similar education, similar whatever it could be, gender or age or whatever demography, and you're free to have that interaction with the team. Everybody becomes very free and creativity flows when there is that kind of ease. We also offer flexible work environments. So when employees have flexible work environments, they're able to, because this flexible work environment speaks to diverse needs of the diverse teams. So when you have flexible work hours, we have remote jobs, all of this speaks to the needs of a diverse team, and it also helps to foster diversity and inclusion in the team. Then celebrating diversity through events and recognition programs. So celebrating different days that speaks to different groups, International Women's Day, International Men's Day, Children's Day, whatever it is, you celebrate it with the team and make them to feel recognized and appreciated. Also, we have implementing fair policies and practices. This is speaking to equity, basically. Most of the time, I always like to make people understand that we're not talking about equality most of the time. We're talking about equity and fairness, giving people the same level playing ground, irrespective of what their backgrounds is about. So implementing fair policies and practices would enable a culture of inclusivity and diversity. Then we have, of course, regular evaluation and measure. So we need to regularly check and measure that we are doing the right thing. Sometimes we just need to create a structured timeline for a check-in to see that are we actually practicing what we want to, are we practicing the values that we have put in place to achieve this diversity in our team. So when we are doing this evaluation, the key metrics to check for our employee satisfaction, retention rates, diversity statistics, and so on and so forth. This will help us to understand if we are really progressing as much as we want to. The next point we will be looking at is the ways to identify diversity needs. Like I said earlier, diversity needs speaks to the fact that if we want to be innovative, if we want to be creative, we need to have different people from different backgrounds, in our workforce that would help us to achieve our goal. If we are strict to say that we want only people from this age or people from this tribe or people from this gender, you see that there's a bit of limitation in your workforce. So what are the things that we look out for that would speak to the fact or help us to understand that we actually do need to diversify. First is understanding the workforce. And we can do this by gathering data. Data-driven insights will help us to understand where we have any certain gaps. If you conduct employee surveys, we have employee resource groups, we speak to them and ask them questions, get feedback from them, gather a lot of data. Even when employees are exiting, we ask them what they feel about our diversity and inclusive culture. And we get all this feedback from, all this data that would help us to understand if we are really, meeting our diversity goals or we have a gap somewhere. When we've gathered this data, the next thing we'll be doing is to conduct a diversity audit. We get to, run through our policies, run through our processes, and check, are we actually doing what we want to do by, are we actually achieving our diversity goals and our inclusive work culture like we have set out to do. So when we do all of these audits, we check through our recruitment strategies, we check through our retention rates, and we ask ourselves the questions internally if we are actually doing the right thing. And then, of course, we have ongoing engagements. We have regular check-ins with our recruitment team, with our hiring managers, with the entire employees, even with the leadership to say, is there anywhere there is a gap of any sort to show that we are not achieving the goals that we have set in terms of being a diverse and inclusive workplace. And then we have the last heading here, aligning your diversity needs with your recruitment strategy. So when we've done all of this research, you've gathered data, you've spoken to focus groups, you have regular check-ins with your team, we would then sit down and strategically align our needs that we have identified with our recruitment goals. So how do we do this? First of all, we define diversity goals, which I've spoken to earlier, where we say that what we want to achieve is a diverse team, a team that is full of vibrant people from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, from different demographics, from different genders, that speaks to creativity and innovation. When we have defined this, then we now have a targeted recruitment efforts. When we are recruiting, we are intentionally speaking to the fact that we want to hire people from diverse walks of life. So our recruitment strategies is already outlined in terms of what we've spoken earlier, blind recruitment, standard criteria and standard interview questions. Then we also talk about inclusive job descriptions. When we are writing our JDs as HR professionals, we need to ensure that we are inclusive. We are not in any way sidelining anybody from any walk of life. Anybody, be it a disabled person, anyone from any gender, anyone from any tribe or country is able to do the job if what we are trying to achieve is a diverse work culture. And then, of course, we have a bias-free hiring practices, speaking to all the way that we have outlined earlier on how we take out any kind of unconscious biases. We are not looking at people's names. We are not looking at their backgrounds. If somebody is bold enough to say, I'm disabled in this, I'm disabled here and there, but you can see the person's experience is speaking to the fact that they have achieved a lot. We're not going to sideline this person because of one or two biases in our head. So these are the things that we need to put in place to ensure that we have a diverse work culture. Fun fact is, diversity in the workplace is very essential. I mean, we have statistics to show that several successful organizations have put diversity in place so that they are getting a wide range of talents that speaks to the organizational goals. So we have come to the end of today's session, and we'll be happy to take questions, comments, and feedback from everyone in the audience. Thank you so much. Taiwo, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Vivian. Thank you for that insightful and impactful section. Okay, so moving on, we'll be taking questions now. Please, if you have any question, you can either unmute and speak to us, or you can just drop your question in the chat box. Do we have any question, please? Questions, feedback, questions, anything? We can drop our comments in the chat box if you don't want to speak. Any question? Okay, someone is asking, what is blind hiring?
Okay. So, blind hiring, as we mentioned earlier, is speaking to the fact that we turn a blind eye to certain things that may speak to us being biased. For example, a name on a CV. So we are looking at a CV and we see a name that speaks to a certain part of the country or certain part of the world. We turn a blind eye to that. Okay, we're not looking at the person's name, or we're not looking at if the person puts place of origin or state of origin. We're not looking at that. We're not looking at education, uh, educational qualification, for example. Maybe the person studied fine arts and the person is applying for a job in, what do I say, something different from that. And then we go straight to the person's skill set, experience, certifications, professional certifications, all of those things are the things that will now inform your recruitment. So you're turning a blind eye to anything that will make you biased, because someone can actually study economics, for example, and be a fantastic graphic designer. Someone can study, for example, myself, I studied languages, and here I am, a HR professional. So these things, these biases can make us limit our recruitment strategies. So as a recruiter, if you just see a CV and you're like, person studied English, not what I'm looking for, and you throw away the CV, you may have missed out a fantastic talent who has great insights, great experience, great skill set, so many other certifications, professional certifications that you have missed out because you didn't turn a blind eye to that. So that's what we mean by blind recruitment. I hope that's clear.
Okay, please, do you have any other questions? Any other feedback? Okay, I'll think if there's no question.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time on this session.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining this month's webinar series. We hope to see you in the upcoming months. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this session. I will hope that you learned a lot from this session, because I did. Okay, please, my colleague dropped a feedback form for us in the chat box. Kindly look at it and fill it. It's not going to take so much time. Within 1 minute, you should be done filling it. And please, once you are done filling it, you can just write, I'm done, I filled it, anything to indicate that you filled the feedback form. Thank you. Okay, please, we can fill the feedback form. Thank you very much. Like I said, it's not going to take so much time. It's very short form. So we can just fill it and just indicate in the chat box that we filled it. Thank you very much. And peradventure, we have any questions or anything, we can always wait behind. We'll wait behind for about 5 minutes after the webinar to attend to our questions. So please fill the feedback form and please indicate in the chat box that you filled it. And we also drop the link to our social media pages, our Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook page. So you can just follow up and you can see any of our events that's coming up, either webinar, any of the things that we are doing. We put it on our social media pages. So you can just follow us on social media also. Thank you very much, Wayne. Thank you for filling the form. Thank you, Stephen. Please, as many as not filled it, please, you can fill it. Thank you. We are still on the call. We can still fill the feedback form, please. We are here to do so. I can just drop it in the chat box that you've done. You fill the feedback form. Thank you.